Riverton City disposal site on fire again. Was it deliberately set? The authorities are investigating. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on air and online at onespotmedia.com. I'm Vashan Brown. Also this evening, the search is on for a new managing director of National Energy Solutions, but the PNP is promising more bombshell revelations. Basil Wade signals he's the target of a smear campaign, and 2 men are dead and a police constable injured in Clarendon. There's also sports commentary and weather in this newscast, so stay with us. The news in detail after this break.
Primetime News.
Welcome back to Primetime News and a special welcome to the viewers on onespotmedia.com. We begin this newscast with a developing story. A fire is now raging at the Riverton City disposal site in St. Andrew. There is now a thick cloud of smoke coming from the site, which stretches along Spanish Town Road and onto a section of the Mandela Highway in St. Catherine. The smoke and the fire are visible from all the way in the hills of Plantation Heights. Now, earlier this evening, callers to our newsroom also reported extremely poor visibility on the Mandela Highway due to the thickness of the smoke. Kingston and St. Andrew Divisional Head of the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Andrew Russell, spoke with our news centre.
Well, I can confirm that there's a fire now raging at the Riverton City landfill. Presently, we have 3 fire units on location combating the blaze. It is covering a wide area based on the report that we have received.
He also explained what the brigade is now doing to deal with the blaze.
Yes, we are pulling all the resources that are available to us now to have them sent to Riverton. As a matter of fact, we have just instructed Halfway Tree to respond to Riverton as well, because we are trying to contain the fire within the shortest possible time, so as to mitigate again the impact that it will have on the environment.
And the National Solid Waste Management Authority, the NSWMA, says it has ordered an immediate investigation. The NSWMA says it appears arsonists lit 2 fires at the Riverton City disposal site in less than 12 hours. In a statement this evening, Chairman of the NSWMA, Dennis Chung, says the authority is checking whether there were any procedural breaches in security access. Our news centre spoke with Mr. Chung earlier this evening.
On the fact that there was one this morning and it was put out, and then another one occurred after that. And information that came to me, which, you know, I'm really hoping is not so, but the information is that there were traces of liquid found coming from the fire, which resembled petrol. You know, and the appeal that we're making is that if that is in fact so, then, you know, we're appealing to the people who might be responsible not to do it, because it costs taxpayers millions of dollars.
Mr. Chung says he has spoken to the Prime Minister, who has asked the NSWMA to increase security and surveillance island-wide on the landfills. On to other news now. The opposition People's National Party is now taking direct aim at the entire board of the National Energy Solutions Limited, NESOL. Just last week, the managing director, Caroline Warren, walked away from her post following disclosures relating to her criminal record. However, as we now hear in this report, the PNP believes the entire board is compromised. Following intense scrutiny surrounding her past criminal record, Caroline Warren relented and has walked. That does not mean, however, that there's less heat. Now the opposition has the NESOL board in the line of fire. According to energy spokesman Philip Paulwell, over $1 billion has been spent, and Mrs. Warren's departure has not addressed accountability issues.
The story is bigger than that. Yes, she has since admitted that she didn't disclose, and that was wrong. She should have disclosed. Also, the board that's supposed to have interviewed her should have found out, because you must be doing background checks. And in those instances, I fault her and the board. But there are some bigger things.
At center stage for the PNP at the moment are the contracts that were signed by NESOL during Mrs. Warren's tenure. Mr. Paulwell suggested that all may not have been above board. He said someone with a questionable background also had signing privileges.
And so when I examine those who sign those checks and the contracts that were issued, I promise you, this is bigger than Petrojam, it's bigger than everything else.
It was claimed that based on the mismanagement and corruption that plagued the entity, it's time for a fresh start.
But you can't clean it up by just the managing director leaving. The board has to leave as well. That board has to go as well. The board has to go as well.
Today, Mrs. Warren's position was advertised in the newspaper. A suitable qualified engineer is being sought to take over. A related entity, Petrojam, has also been rocked by scandal. Among other things, questions have been raised about the qualification of the human resources manager at the entity. Meanwhile, in light of the widening scandal that has engulfed the National Energy Solutions, NESOL, the call for former Energy Minister Dr. Andrew Wheatley to be removed from Cabinet has intensified. Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, NIA, Professor Trevor Monroe, has reiterated the call. While speaking yesterday evening at a Jamaica University College reunion banquet, Professor Monroe said Dr. Wheatley should step aside given the egregious breaches that took place under his watch as minister. He said that in the past, JLP ministers such as Mike Henry and Joseph Hibbert had resigned over breaches. He said resignations also took place under the PNP.
And so,
going further back, 2002, Minister Carl Blythe resigned over the irregularities and the scandals related to Operation Pride. And the list goes on and on and on. Hence, it is not partisan, but it is in the public interest that our current minister, Wheatley, should do the right thing. Especially following allegations no longer relating to Petrojam alone, but to other entities under his control, NESOL under his jurisdiction, and most recently, the Spectrum Management Agency. He must do the right thing, as others before him.
Issues surrounding allegations of corruption are now being investigated by several agencies, including the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, MOCA. Despite the ongoing investigations, Professor Monroe is asserting that the embattled minister should step aside.
Breaking any law, I make no such allegation. I'm not an investigator. MOCA and the Integrity Commission are doing their investigations, and their results will be shown at some point in the future. I am talking about violating a code of conduct. And as you know, when you were at Michael, as 143, you know that there was a code of conduct there. You know it better than I. And if that code were violated, sanctions were to be applied. And so too, what applies to the goose should apply to the gander. If there's a code, it must be obeyed because it sets the standards that should be followed, whether it's a code for lawyers, doctors, academics, or ministers.
More calls this evening for the government to address the issue of compensation for members of the security forces who are working long hours in the state of emergency. Chairman of the Police Federation, Corporal Arlene McBean, says police personnel are working overtime and are not being properly compensated. We have more in this report. It's a matter raised by opposition Senator Damian Crawford in the Upper House on Friday. The long hours police personnel are working in the state of emergency in St. James and the St. Catherine North Division.
You have police men and women who in 2008 to 2010 agreed to a 40-hour work week. 8 hours a day for 5 days. Now working 16 hours a day for 6 days. And there is no preparation, consideration for any remuneration.
The Police Federation Chairman, Corporal Arlene McBean, says members of the JCF are only being paid overtime for 10 additional hours, despite working more than 50 hours per week. She says this is based on the added hours policy, which is meant to be a temporary measure. The 2008-2010 compensation agreement stated that the added hours policy will be replaced when a fully operational overtime claim system is set up. To date, such a system has not been set up.
So yes, in the enhanced security operational procedure right now, you find that police officers are working beyond 50 hours, beyond 60 hours. and there is no claimable system of overtime established for them.
The Police Federation says it has also received complaints from rank-and-file members working in the zones of special operations in Denhamtown, West Kingston, and Mount Salem in St. James.
Our police officers have complained that they have been promised a stipend from the whole establishment of the zone of special operation concept, and their names have been taken, their TRN, their NIS numbers, over and over and over. So in Denham Town and in Montego Bay, to date, they have not received $1. That's for the zone of special operation. They are working far beyond the hours. They are working far beyond the hours in the state of emergency also.
The police and the government have been locked in wage negotiations. The police are intensifying strategies to clamp down on human trafficking, which is seemingly increasing in Jamaica. At a two-day international conference in Trelawney, which ended on Thursday, it was revealed that at least 5 traffickers have been nabbed in Jamaica over the past 5 years. And as TVJ's Kelisha Williams reports, the police are urging Jamaicans to be more vigilant.
The scourge that seemed to be plaguing the country, human trafficking. The police say, among other things, traffickers use attractive employment offers to target Jamaicans. They are then sold into prostitution and forced labor, both locally and overseas. 82 victims of the illicit trade have been rescued in the country between 2010 and 2018, and 5 persons were arrested and charged.
We have every year increased our rescue operations, so we have rescued more victims each year since. And that could be because people are now more informed and are reporting in.
Since then, the police have been working with countries like the United States and Canada to clamp down on human trafficking.
I am proud to say that our partnership against trafficking in persons is strong and it's growing. Multiple U.S. agencies are working closely with their Jamaican law enforcement counterparts and the Ministry of Justice to help combat human trafficking. This year, our security assistance budget exceeded $12 million in a clear sign of our commitment.
But according to Deputy Superintendent of Police in charge of anti-trafficking, Carl Berry, Jamaicans still need to be more vigilant in order to reduce the impact of human trafficking.
How could you, without a subject, for example, expect to be paid $5,000 per week? That's impossible unless you have some special skills, for example. And that's not what they are asking for. And I'm saying that how could you apply for the position of a masseuse and you didn't qualify yourself in there? You follow where I'm going? And they're not asking you for qualification and they're not providing training. Just use basic common sense.
Kelisha Williams, TVJ News.
It appears that all is not well in the PNP's northeast St. Elizabeth stronghold. The strong indication has come from Basil Waite. Mr. Waite had won a selection contest in May to represent the constituency. However, speaking at a divisional meeting, Mr. Waite indicated that there are forces that are working against him.
On the 20th of May, I won a selection because of you and your support. And very shortly after, I hear them spreading all kind of propaganda. I'm just smile and laugh because, comrades, I am protected by the Almighty.
The constituency is currently represented by Evan Redman. It was previously represented by Kern Spencer. Mr. Waite told supporters that he will not be daunted.
Regardless of how them propagandize me, regardless of how them vilify me, regardless of how they tell lies on me, they cannot break the fire that is within me.
2 men were shot dead and a police constable was shot and injured by gunmen this morning during a confrontation in the Dampy area of Clarendon. It said that one of the victims was among Clarendon's most wanted. The constable was part of a team which was conducting an operation in the area about 6 o'clock. The police say while on patrol, they came under fire from a group of gunmen. The cops say they fired back and during the exchange of gunfire, the constable was shot and injured. The constable, who was taken to hospital, was treated and his condition is said to be stable. The police say when the shooting ended, they found 2 men with gunshot wounds. They were also taken to hospital, where they were pronounced dead, and up to news time, they had not been identified. 2 firearms and a motor car were also seized. The police have launched a manhunt for 8 other men said to be involved in the incident. And an editorial note now. On Monday, in reporting on the plans of Amber Connect to use emerging technology to make their services less dependent on telecom providers, our headline suggested it planned to set up its own telecom infrastructure. Amber Connect did not make that claim, and we regret the misleading inference. And still ahead in Primetime News, the business review and international stories. We invite you to stay with us.
Primetime News brought to you by
The Port Authority of Jamaica, PAJ, is pushing ahead with the automation of processes at the wharves to ensure a better experience. With that and more, we join Dashan Hendricks for the business review.
Ultimately, what we want to do is to improve the movement of cargo within Jamaica.
Dwayne Powell is the director of the Port Community Systems at the Port Authority of Jamaica. He's been in charge of the $8 million 5-year project, which started in 2016, to transform the process of clearing cargo from being paper-based to electronic.
We've started with transshipment that has been implemented now successfully, and now we're at the point where we're implementing the import component of the project.
The project aims to give 24-hour access to users. So far, he said, they have managed to cut the time to turn around the cargo for transshipment from up to 2 hours to just 5 minutes. That's dealing effectively with 90% of goods which land at Jamaica's ports.
Although 10% of all cargo that comes to Jamaica is really only for import, it's the most complex component of it. Commercial component in terms of cargo, and also LCL, which is non-commercial, that affects the man in the streets, barrels, boxes, etc.
He said starting with transshipment was a no-brainer because it's easier to move full cargoes on the cars, but those clearing boxes and barrels will not be left out.
We expect to move to LCL by September, October of this year. What we're trying to do is to start the process so that we try to beat the Christmas rush, which starts usually between October and November. And so most of the times, you know that there's a very large spike in terms of both cargo and in terms of the number of persons who actually have to go to the port to clear cargo. And so what we're trying to do is to work with the industry to try to implement some of these processes so that, as you said, the man in the street spends less time getting his imports.
The company the Port Authority is working with is Sogei, a French-based entity. It has been implementing similar systems in 8 countries. For Mr. Powell, this latest move will help to push Jamaica into the realms of a major logistics economy.
If you look globally at, any country that is doing logistics very well, Spain, France, Germany, etc., all of them have implemented port community systems, and they have mature port community systems. We started in earnest this project in 2016, but the Shipping Association has been championing this cause for probably 20 years now.
The system as implemented is built with feedback from those who use it. For the Business Review, I am Dashan Hendricks.
Business Review brought to you by I got my mortgage from my dream home. Call for your VMBS mortgage today.
With VMBS, you're sure